Here we have To Build a Fire. Welcome, everybody. I'm Doug at The Freelance Teacher, and let's cover the short. Hello, everybody. This is Doug at The Freelance Teacher. Let's cover To Build a Fire by Jack London. I'm at TheFreelanceTeacher.teachable.com. Here we have a basic story. Jack London wrote the story after the Gold Rush, and it's during the Naturalist movement, so nature plays a main role. The story has a very basic plot. The man has to get from point A, the trailhead, to point B, base camp. The temperature is dangerously cold, and the man, who never gets named, is alone. So solitude plays a role in this as well. The imagery of the area, the setting, is actually its own character. It plays a role unto itself. The main points of the plot are these. The story begins at dawn. The man has to get to the boys before sundown. That gives him a few daylight hours to get there. He walks with practical knowledge, not a deeper secondary knowledge. As a matter of fact, it says on page 1, he, quote, lacks imagination, and that's his problem. He doesn't think things through. He has knowledge, but the second level of knowledge he seems to lack. Remember, he's up there prospecting for timber, so he knows what it's like up there, and he knows how to navigate. But the omniscient third-person narrator says, well, he doesn't quite think it through, and that is a problem. So he begins his walk, and he walks carefully. Middle of the day, he successfully builds a fire. This is a key point, and he eats lunch, his biscuits with bacon grease spread out all over them and some bacon. He walks carefully. He's then joined by a husky like the one in the picture. And here's the issue and the main problem with the story. He breaks through the ice and gets wet. And at that temperature, that could be a death sentence. And he knows this. So he builds a fire. But the problem is this secondary idea, because he builds a fire and slowly, imperceptibly, the tree he builds it under shakes a little bit as he snips off twigs and branches. Because he builds a fire under those branches, the little heat from the new fire and the minor shaking that went on, the snow cascades, tumbles down, snuffs out the fire, and a desperate man freezes to death on the trail. The dog lives, but the man dies. The deeper themes and meanings of the story are these. It's man versus nature, and that's an obvious one. He is in a rough section of nature, and he loses the battle at the end. A less discussed theme is man versus man. He feels he's capable. He knows that old man from Sulphur Creek, the representative wise old man, said things to him, but on his inside, in the feelings he has in himself, he's like, I'm not going to take that into account. I'm going to walk anyway. I'm not going to listen to that old fool. And there's some youthful arrogance there, right? You have a guy in solitude, in the Yukon Territory, way up north. Rugged individualism. But because that bit of hubris, that bit of arrogance, he does not listen to the man from Sulphur Creek, and it winds up costing him. So the dog, who actually is also unnamed, operates by instinct, doesn't necessarily think in the way we do. The dog lives. And the man, who actually has feelings like arrogance and thinks that he can defeat nature, he can defeat the elements, the man dies. Another interesting thing of the man versus dog stuff is the dog is the man's servant. The dog pays attention and follows the man's commands. But he is the one, ironically, to survive. And the man who can think and create dies. The power of nature is never to be underestimated. And the fact that no one has a name in the story is interesting. It gives the story a stark, cold feel to it. It even says it certainly was cold a few times within the first 2 pages. It certainly was cold. Summarizing this short story, you have the inner battle within. You have the importance of the journey. This man's journey is the whole story. He never gets to the end. His inner arrogance and youthfulness versus the old man's wisdom and experience is another battle, another conflict. And the imagery itself, the setting, is its own role. The setting, the cold, the snow brings about death, and there is your ending to to build a fire.